roll call. Mayor DeGoya,
I'm here.
Vice Mayor Lewis,
Here.
Chair Polito,
Here.
Vice Chair Mr. Massey,
Here.
Mr. Jeffrey Lee,
Here.
Mr. Kenneth Hausman,
Here.
and Mr. Gary Dillabo is excused. Will not be here. Just before we start, I'd just like to introduce Mr. Kenneth Hausman. Welcome to the Finance Committee, and Mr. Gary Dillabo will have a chance to meet with him the next meeting. I just want to introduce the other new members starting this fiscal year, so welcome.
Public comment?
Public comment today.
Yes.
Really?
Oh,
I did stick around.
Oh.
Because I wanted to commend you hardworking people. I commended it to Bob and Rick earlier. And I thought as long as you were starting, I'd stick around and at least praise you. Because the result of volunteers like you, I think, is anybody who's being paid, raise your hand, right? Most of you are volunteers, if not all of you. Oh, right.
Well, just the staff.
Robert's gonna continue to be paid.
Okay, right,
Hopefully.
Based on the intensive nature of council meetings some years ago, before Elizabeth was mayor, I don't think you guys were being paid enough. So my compliments to those of you who stuck around, and my compliments also because we can't, most of us don't have the time or the skills to understand the finances of Atherton, and it's so complex with so many regulations. So I appreciate the diligence of the staff, and obviously appreciate the dedication of the volunteers who make the finance committee a vital part of our Atherton town. So thank you very much. Again, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
will.
Thank you.
Will that go verbatim into the
Yes.
minutes?
We
Okay.
will make sure.
You're on TV.
Definitely.
Hi, Mom. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I have a couple of public comments. One, two on good, what I feel is good youth. They're both target the finance committee. The traffic enforcement on El Camino is, they're at it every day. It's a great use of the police tax money that we voted for. I mean, they had 3 guys stopped this afternoon, so I'm keep it up. Secondly, since I sit and whine here about potholes and road work and capital projects, I want to say that it's so great to see stuff going on the roads and all the work that's being done. Even some of my friends on Atherton Avenue who were blocked in say it's just great. Those are the 2 good ones. The bad one is, I don't know if everybody saw this, but CalPERS apparently has missed their targeted investment objectives of 7.5% by almost 4%, which means that we as a city will probably have to be shoring up the pension funds again. So I'm just alerting you to think that as the budget comes up next year, that once again, the Kool-Aid that they keep selling does not work. And I think the target, they actually hit 3.5% and we were 4% short, if I remember what I saw in the paper. So
You're talking about the fiscal year ending June 30th?
yeah. So they just announced
Hasn't looked lately, but they were doing pretty well last time.
Right, well, they announced a few weeks ago, but it was under the 7.5 target, so that will have a financial impact. So thank
We will
you.
research that. Thank you.
Moving on to the regular agenda, if there's no other comments, approve the draft minutes for our May 5th meeting. Did anybody see anything wrong?
Yeah, I have a comment on the draft minutes. Also, when the city manager and I took our little pothole tour of Lloyden Park, where we did not find any potholes. But what we did discover was he discovered there's a whole new street he'd never seen in Atherton called Lloyden Park Lane, which runs behind the sound wall, which he was unaware, and most people are, that the city actually owned and is responsible for maintaining. It was privately paid for by the residents of Lloyden Park, particularly those living on Lloyden Park Lane, and it was donated to the city and accepted by the city some years ago. So it is the city's responsibility, and that was new information to George.
So you want that added to the
And then public
minutes
comment?
Yes.
Okay.
in the, under the public
And I
comment?
want to say we didn't find any potholes either. I want to make sure we had. That
No
comes back to
potholes.
my capital
I
improvement
know.
projects.
That was good.
So
Okay.
thank you.
Any other corrections or amendments?
I have one, for the, on item number 4 for the motion, I had put motion, was seconded by Mr. Massey, but I believe it was Mr. Enthoven.
No, believe it or not.
It was Mr. Massey?
I made an exclamation point. I think Jim seconded the motion and then voted
And then you
against
voted,
it.
okay, that's why, okay. So then I got it correct then. Okay, that's my only comment, but then, so we'll leave it
Anything
as
else?
is.
Okay, motion to approve,
So moved.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now I guess we can move on, so that Jim and I can be fired and replaced, I believe. Need to select a chair and a vice chair for the coming fiscal year.
Yeah, would you like
Yes.
to share mine? Yeah.
Every July, we hold a selection of a chair and vice chair, and it begins again at the beginning of the fiscal year. That does not need to, there's no need to change, but it's something that we also hold as nominations for changing of the chair and vice chair. And again, it's only for those that are part of the committee, council members that are part of the liaisons on the committee cannot be vice chair or chair.
Mhm.
So, with that said, we can open it up if we want to do a selection for chair and vice chair.
Well, I move that the current chair stay the current chair, because she's doing a great job.
Is this like a normal thing where we can, if he says that, then we just have comments, or is that a motion?
No, it's not a motion. It's a motion.
is
I
a
don't know.
motion.
I'm not.
It's a
That's why I
motion.
don't want
He
to be
motions it,
chair.
and someone can
Because
second it.
I feel
There needs to
strongly.
be a motion for a chair and
Okay,
a vice chair.
I second your belief. I think that's, it's been a challenging but great year for a finance committee, as far as finance committee goes. I'm not talking about the town or the other things. Just, this operation has been very efficient and effective. I think we've seen a lot of work done before and after the meetings. I felt it, and I really appreciate it as a member of the committee.
Any other,
You know, we don't
We
vote,
can't vote.
but I'll say I think you've done an excellent job. I really think you've
And
done
I'll
an
second
excellent job.
the mayor's comments on that.
thank you, but
Yeah.
it's really not that tough running these.
Well, then you can just
Does
slide
a
right
great
in,
job.
right?
Wait till we get pensions coming up again.
I enjoy doing it, and I will try and put in the time when necessary to make sure we get things done. So I guess I'll call a vote unless anybody else has any comments. All in favor? Opposed?
I can't vote,
Right.
but, yeah.
Okay, I didn't get fired.
Okay.
Now we'll move on to item number 5.
How about the
Oh,
vice
the
chair?
vice chair.
Oh, we gotta do
sorry.
them separately.
Yes,
I thought we
and
were
vice chair.
leaving the committee the same, or the officers. or
And
whatever
we
you
could,
call
if vice chair currently is Mr. Massey, so we could entertain a motion for.
I would like to be so bold as one of the few non-members, non-chair and vice chair and non-city council members. I think there's only 2 of us right now. But I motion to keep the vice chair position also the same and to renominate you to be vice chair for another year.
it. Second.
Okay.
Take a
Any
vote.
other? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I didn't get fired either.
Now we go on
Fabulous
to
payments we get for these jobs.
I think sometimes it's really helpful to have a 2-year term. In lots of
Yeah.
other, jurisdictions, the mayor serves 2 years, and I'd really like to have our mayor continue and do 2 years and stuff, because you kind of get going, but
Yeah.
we don't do that.
You know, I was sitting here earlier thinking the exact same thing,
Mhm.
that these committees, almost, I don't know if it's in the bylaws or what it takes for the council to do that, but I think that makes some sense, because
Mhm.
it takes
Mm-hmm.
some time to get up to speed on some of
Yeah,
this
you
stuff.
just have
Right.
the consistencies
Yeah.
and stuff, yeah. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, so we have, item number 5, we have our lead senior auditor, Catherine here. And
Great.
Grace, that's right. And I believe you're gonna take us through everything you're doing and have done and will do to finish the audit for the fiscal year that just ended, correct?
Yes.
So I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Sure. Well, thank you for having us. Catherine Yun, I'm the engagement partner with Mason Associates. Grace, the manager on the job. And what the purpose of this meeting is to get your input. If you have any things that we want us to look at to this year's audit. We have conducted one phase of the audit, and we will come back in October to complete the other phase. So this is a good time to take into input of anything that you may have of concerns for us to plan out the rest of the audit. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Grace, and she can give you more details of what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you, Kat. So, and good afternoon, committee members. Congratulations for re-election. Yeah, so the CES 114 communication standard, it's standard and it's routine. This year we had our interim in last June. Thanks a lot for the tremendous help for finance staff led by Finance Director Robert. It's really, we truly appreciate what he has done for us and the finance staff team. So I believe you have all got the CES 114 meeting memo. So just want to let you know that the CES 114 is a standard audit communication requirement, and in the past few years, there's no changes in terms of the content and requirement. So I'm not going to delve into more details because last year I have been through them step by step, explaining each step in detail.
I mean, unless there's something you would like us to do, because it's a rather long memo. If you want us to go into detail, or would you rather just have an overview? Which way would you like us to do? Because I understand you have new members too.
That's a good question.
Well, I think it probably maybe just kind of go over, for the sake of, we have new members, and also just to kind of rehash and recap the audit process, the scope, what you look for. You don't have to go into detail, but again, like they were saying, this SAS 114 is a required audit communications that auditors have with agencies, not only just government agencies, but with other companies that they have. It's a formality that you go and you meet with the directors. And the finance committee is an arm of the city council, so through the finance committee, they're coming here to kind of present to you what they're going to go through as far as the audit, what they look at. Possibly, if you want to just kind of go over the audit scope, what you look for.
Yeah. So this year we have our focus audit. Each year we focus and rotate our testing. Depends on what our past experience is and what we have found in last year. So this year we focus on the cash receipt testing, and our testing so far have no issue. And we so generally we do a lot of brainstorming and do a lot of questioning and talk with the staff, understanding the internal control of the town, what kind of proper mitigation control in place to ensure that the finance statement delivered in the final will be materially correct and without material mistakes. So that's essentially what we did for this year. And
You said you had particular focus on cash receipts,
yes,
which is kind of a small thing for us, isn't it?
We don't have a lot of cash receipts.
There are routine things that we do. We look at internal controls in general. We interview staff, and in the process we verify what staff says that they have done. They really did it. So, for example, if Robert is going to review bank reconciliation, we obtain evidence for that. So every year we look at the internal controls structure of the town. We also look at the information system to ensure that there are proper controls, especially in relation for the part that in relation to the financial system. And we look at journal entries every year, budget, and so there are areas that I think what Grace was trying to say is that each year we rotate our focus. So we look at every year we look at the big picture, but we will choose areas that we will dive into it more. So we look at budget, journal entries. We look at all the internal controls of cash receipts, disbursement, stuff like that. And I'm sorry.
No, I was just thinking, do you also audit the post office accounting and how that, because that would, I would think, be the most cash receipts that we get.
Well-
Other cash receipts would be from what?
Well, they look at like park revenue. Cash receipts would include like we receive our property taxes from the county. That's considered cash receipts.
Oh,
The
even
cash
though-
receipts, yeah,
It's
Cash
not
receipts
just
is in general.
funds coming in.
Right, funds that come into the
okay,
city. It's
not
not just like
cash.
right,
No, it's always
Exactly.
revenue in general.
Right, revenue in general.
Yeah.
right,
Well, we do get quite a
Yeah.
bit of that.
right.
So we
Exactly.
go from, we make sure that the revenue reported is validated and we go all the way to like the bank statement, so we trace
Sure.
it through the process.
Okay, well, that makes a
So-
lot of sense. I mean,
Yeah,
it just-
it makes a lot more sense, because
Yes.
I really thought you meant,
No,
Right,
yeah,
that's what you guys
And
are
that's why I was trying to get down to,
Park
the
revenue,
post
post
office
office
takes
money.
in
Yeah.
cash and they, have to balance out and they give out change and,
Yeah.
that's a lot of cash handling.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes our post offices, but do you do the audit of that also?
Yes,
Okay.
we have staff talk to the cash receipt,
Mhm.
the cashier and
Mhm.
understand
Yeah.
what kind of proper control in place.
Right,
That we do every year,
okay,
so.
okay.
so how many people did you have in here?
How many people?
We have, there's Grace, and then we have one supervisor and 2 staff. So it's 3 people plus a manager and a partner.
So 5 total.
Just want to make sure it was what we agreed to.
And when you're
Yeah.
looking at cash receipts, you look at the inflow, and then do you, so we've got cash receipts coming in from a series of different public agencies. And are you looking at where each of those separate receipts are logged?
Yes, we-
Maybe you could walk
Like
through the process
measure
of
in
what you're
funds,
doing.
like the gas tax, like, the real estate tax. And
So-
how the library funds, how that,
So for interim, we validate the existence of revenue reported. So we go from the cash register, and then we pull transaction, and then we ask for the backup, the remittance advice and stuff like that. Then based on that, we look at the where it is recorded on the GL to make sure it is proper fund, and we also trace it to the badge, the cash receipts badge, and then to the deposit slip to the bank statement. So make sure that we're trying to make sure that they are reported in the proper fund, and also it got it all the way to the bank. So for final, which we do every year, we validate to make sure the completeness of the revenue. So we send out confirmation, then ask, for example, the state how much you have given the town this year, and make sure that revenue got onto the books of the town. So we do it in 2 different ways.
I like the planning department, the building permit, because there's a lot of money that's brought into the building department as deposits, like the recycling deposit or whatever, and then that has to go out
Right.
to the, so that has to be managed quite clearly. And at one point, we had excess funds, or not excess funds, but funds that, these deposits that had not been collected, right? Robert, and that accumulated, and then we sent out letters,
Right.
and then there was a time
I mean,
frame, so is
deposits that hadn't been returned to the depositor.
right,
Right.
right, and so that's all been shaken out, or are we still
Yeah,
working
as
through
part
that?
of the, because we did interim, as part as us finalizing the final, as we get to the next stage, those deposits will be because they did not have the proper, they're forfeited once they don't return the tags and receipts. Those will become revenue to the town.
Okay,
So yeah, we follow that process, and that will be done by the time we get to final. That will show up in the financial statements as deposits that are returned,
Do we-
or that the town keeps because.
All complete,
Mhm.
because it seems like we've been behind the eight.
Yes, no, and I think we were we wanted to verify too, to make sure, because of the way building projects work here, they're over several fiscal years. And so, once the project is finalized, we want to verify that if they're finalized and they didn't turn in their tags, then that means that deposit's forfeited. So that's the reason why.
I remember this discussion exactly a year ago.
Right.
I remember
I
6 years
yeah.
ago.
It goes back longer.
I wanted the perpetrators to be publicly put on the website. These are construction firms that aren't recycling.
Right.
They're just dumping it at the landfill, which is
Yes.
why they can't bring the tags back.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So it's actually really, I think every city does that in California.
Right.
They get away with it. It's pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's too
Or
bad.
they lose their tags.
Right, and I think that's the thing too. They lose their tags. They don't have proof that they dispersed it where they were supposed to. And a lot of and the onus does fall on them, on the builders, that they do recycle the correct way. And when they don't turn them in, I mean, it's money out of their pocket. That's why we require these deposits.
Owner's pocket.
Or that's
Yeah,
true.
in a lot of ways, they just don't.
They don't know.
Worry about it.
Yeah,
Right.
that's just the way it all stacks.
Mhm, yeah.
Are tax receipts received by check or by wire transfer?
Both.
From the county,
Which
you
I
mean?
guess it
From the
depends.
county?
Yeah. Well, from the county, we get ACH. Most of the property tax ACH. There's some that we do receive checks, like the property transfer tax. That's a check that we receive, but mostly the big ones like property taxes, those are ACH to the city, and they track that as well. The ACH that comes to us, we verify, we log it, we do a journal entry as that coming into our bank statement, and they verify that was wired to our bank statement and that it was recorded properly.
Do we ever audit the validity of that amount, to make sure that we're getting the correct amount from the county?
That rests
That's
with
not-
the
that's
county,
not
right?
our
That's
scope
not
right.
of
okay.
it,
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah, but in terms like, for example, fees collected by the city, we do recalculate based on the approved, council approved schedule, we recalculate the fees.
Oh, okay.
So we make sure that those are accurately.
Mhm. Good, okay.
Of same questions I asked last year covering the area of fraud.
Okay.
One is credit cards. Have there been any increase in the number of credit cards issued in the city? Question one. Question two, were any of the amounts on said credit cards, existing or issued, increased?
So the credit limit for,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Individual credit card. Let's say I got a city credit card and I had a $2,000 limit. In the course of this ensuing year, did I get up to $4,000?
I don't,
Yeah,
what do-
we did look into regarding your question, because I believe you raised the question last
You
year.
bet I asked it
Yeah,
before,
we
yeah.
did look into that, particularly this year, because we are looking at the whole receipt system. The credit card, right now, as we are aware of, there's only nine staff that have credit card,
Okay.
and each one has a limit of $1,000, except for, I believe it's the city manager that has a
Right, it is more. Okay.
over, but
Police
everyone has a.
Police department has a high limit card.
Police department has higher limits.
They have for an emergency card, and they do have. We provide them the list, and they
Chief
verify.
used to have 4,000 or 5,000, and I don't know what it is now, but the chief used
The
to
chief doesn't have a credit card.
The old chief did.
Yeah, but that's
I got a
That's
long,
no
I got
longer
a
in
long
there.
memory on this.
right. No, the chief does
Maybe
not have a
change
credit
that
card.
policy.
Right, right.
The second question in the same area refers to the purchasing policy, which was instituted a couple of years ago. I assume it's being followed, and I shared with the city meeting with the city manager. In looking at it, is there any enhancements or improvements we might need to make to that policy? That was the only question I had on that this year. And the third issue is the disposal of assets and inventory control of city items. Are those procedures being properly followed, and any assets that are disposed of, are they being disposed of with the proper procedures that were installed?
You mean like police vehicles?
I mean,
that are-
anything, stuff was disappearing, you know that, Elizabeth, years ago. Stuff was walking.
Yeah, I don't think,
That's the reason we put these policies in place.
yeah.
So I just wanted to know if they're being followed, that's all I'm asking.
For purchasing policy, we test, I believe last year, we tested last year. We make sure that the city is following its policy.
That's all I'm asking, yeah, that's all.
So, we don't, in testing it, we will look at your policy, and if we see any recommendation we will make it, but we don't, it's not part of our audit scope to review all your policies to make
Right, okay.
recommendations, so just keep that in mind. For disposable of capital assets, if the capital assets meet the capitalization threshold, then we will select a sample at year end, looking at the list of disposal, and then we test for council approval.
So I need to know, thank you.
You're welcome. And then we also look at policy to make sure that with the purchasing policy, we don't like to see one person to approve the purchasing policy, sign the receiving report, and also report the take inventory.
Yeah, no, I think we have
stuff
a
like that.
pretty firm policy that was put in here a couple years ago, and it's been working, I think, pretty good. I just want to make sure that it's still in place and being followed. That was my only question. It's pretty tight, right, Robert?
Yeah.
It is.
We tightened the thing up quite a bit.
Yeah, and as you recall, I think we updated it last year.
Yeah, I remember
the
you,
policy.
Rick, and I, and George met in
Yeah.
his office to discuss some issues.
Do we have any open charge accounts, like at Orchard Supply or John Deere or wherever it might be?
Not John Deere.
I use that as an example.
Office
Do we have
Depot,
any?
Right.
Office Depot or Staples or something like that.
The only one we do is we get invoices like Office Depot, but that's what we order it and it comes in with a shipping.
So it goes to
package.
purchasing system.
Right, goes to our purchasing.
We
And
don't
it's
have
in
any,
that 30 or something.
Yeah.
we don't have
Right.
any place where staff
Can go and
can show up and say, put this on our
No.
account?
No.
None, okay.
We did have that, as you know.
yeah, right. And anything over 1,000 requires a purchase order, and that has a process, and I have to assign. Once it goes through the department and the city manager signs off on the requisition, the purchase order is only assigned through the finance department, and I sign it. So I'm the final one that will allow a purchase order.
Is that true for any purchase that you would sign it?
That's over 1,000 for purchase order.
What about under 1,000? What is the procedure?
The department head has anything below that. The department head can do that as long as it's within their budget. They can go through and purchase things, but they have to go through and verify, making sure that they look at not just buying it from one place, but look at different quotes and stuff to verify that we do our due diligence as far as making sure we're getting the right price for it. But anything, the threshold on the purchasing policy, anything over 1,000 requires a PO.
Okay. And so for events that we have periodically, like the night out that we're going to have, does that have a budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
And then that has a budget that we have that we're allotted, and so it's reviewed through the department heads, and most likely it's going to be through administration, through Teresa and myself, and so we make sure that we have a budget and to pay for whether it's a snow cone maker or anything,
trinkets.
right? Trinkets and stuff.
giveaway
Right.
bags.
Right.
Okay.
I have a question. So you do other cities and towns, I assume?
Yes.
When you see problems, where do you usually see them?
It's
Meaningful problems.
right. It's all over the place. Like one common one will be if finance is a super user of the financial system, we see a lot of that.
And what does that mean, a super user of the financial system?
So a lot of times, because of convenience, the finance director or maybe one or two people in the finance department, although they don't perform the function of running checks or processing cash receipts, they want to have a super user right. Oh, not because they want
You
to.
have
they
the
just,
rights.
yeah,
You have
to
rights to do things.
can do
access
anything.
all of
I
this
see.
system. So when we ask the question, we will ask you, well, can you do this and that? They'll be like, no, we don't do it. But then we will look at the assets law, because independent of the conversation, we do look at the system. So we look at the assets law, and it will turn out that those people will be there.
Mhm.
As a super user, then it takes a lot of time to convince finance why this is a problem. I think most of us want to believe that we are honest, and most of us want to say, well, I'm not going to use it. I don't even know how. Like this, the answer that we always get. Then we have to tell them that, well, yes, it may be true, but A, someone can accuse you of doing something, and B, if you retire, somebody else come on board. Where is the control? So that's the one common one that we still see. A lot of the other ones, it will be like a lot of them. Once they become our clients for a long time, they will have taken care of the other ones. But the super user right seems to be one that is reoccurring a lot of times.
So how do we handle that?
I don't do.
Well, right now, the super user rights, because it was brought up in previous audits, we set up Teresa as the super user, right?
Okay.
So there's a distinguish, so she has the rights in the system,
Mhm.
and we separate it from us not being able to. So if I
She's our
needed
city
access,
clerk.
right?
And assistant
to the city manager.
Assistant to the city manager and city clerk.
So we don't want people that reviews to
Mhm.
have super user rights.
Right.
So as long as somebody reviews the transaction, we tell them, well, the IT person can have the super user right.
Okay.
But we just want to take that away from finance.
Mhm.
I got another one then. And maybe this doesn't fall in the area of audit, but, so it could be your area, but what about exception reporting? In other words, there's so much data going back and forth. In terms of having reports that indicate something that's an anomaly, something that's out of a certain range, that maybe should get more scrutiny. Even the example you're using right now is certain activity around a super user. They've been normally doing this and all of a sudden something changed.
Mhm.
Is that something you look for?
Yes, because
And actually, as a city, do we get those reports where we're, seeing these things?
what we look at when we look at the internal control system, there are 5 steps, and one of the steps is monitoring. Not by the auditor, but we want to see that the town has an internal control system that be able to monitor its own control activities.
Mhm.
So during our interview, we will ask about stuff like that, like does anybody review the exceptions and during the review, and then we obtain evidence of it. Because and a good example will be that a lot of times our clients tell us that they the accounting manager reviews the payroll register, but there's no indication of it. And then our clients like to tell us, okay, I'm just going to do it for you. Well, and I'll tell them, don't do it for me, because you need to have a system that you can prove that you actually have done the review, and somebody in that organization need to spot check it to make sure that review is in place. And that is what we want to see, and if it doesn't happen, then we usually will make recommendation.
Do you look at the reports that are being generated as to whether they are capturing the kind of information that should be flagged, as opposed to a generic question of, gosh, do you have exception reports? Yeah, we got exception reports, but they may not be the right, meaningful. So is that something you also look at?
We don't look at exceptions report itself to make sure the format is acceptable. If it is what we call the key control is what we look at. If that exception report is very crucial to the segregation of duty, then we will look at it. I don't know if that answers your question. So it's not every single result.
I think
Yeah.
I think what you're trying to say is that the exceptions are not data. It's not financial numeric values. These are processes that you're auditing, like a usage log of a system. I think that's what you're trying to say. So it's not data that can be flagged per se, because we only have few people in the office. We have Robert and George. So you're just going to see a lot of Robert or a lot of George or a lot of someone, and that's how you see that there's something fishy possibly going on. And then last time we had a meeting, you said that's because we know this from our commercial lives, that there's mistakes made in the general ledger. Your staff is making a mistake and you have to fix the mistake. And so you need to be able to fix it, and that's why you have a super user. Is that what you said before? People make mistakes.
Right. If I'll spot something, I can't make a journal entry, but I can tell my staff here, make this journal entry. You have to enter in the system. One person enters it, and a different person has to approve it and commit it. Another thing is when they do their testing, for example, they look at when we cut a check, they verify through the AP process how that was processed. Through payroll, they verify, they look at personnel records to verify that the pay rate is the correct rate that we're paying in the system, was the rate that was okayed through personal action form. So they verify through all those processes. That's how they test it. And then we have, in our system, we do have a report that will tell us, just for our capability to, and for them, and they've seen it before, is who's done what, like what has been changed in the last month in the system. Whether if their pay rate was changed, you can see that, and then you can go and trace that through the records. That yes, it was the beginning of fiscal year, so if there was a COLA increase, you can see that it was changed in the system, but there's backup to through PAFs that say yes, these COLAs are adequate and stuff. So it's part of their testing process that they go and verify through the different components, whether it's AP, AR, payroll, and then through those processes they verify through reporting what we can provide for them.
Are there any material recommendations in terms of controls that you had for this year?
Well, we haven't finished our interim audit yet, which is very unusual. So we had an unusual year. We have 3 staff here. There are 40 people in my office. 3 of them had medical issue recently, and they ended up all being on our team for some reason. So we had some challenges in the last month and a half. So we are still trying to conclude that portion of the audit currently.
Are you here right now? Is
No.
your staff not here though?
No.
No, they were here the first week of June, but and then they all got sick, and so you haven't.
No, they were in the.
It was like the week of when we had our council meeting. So the third week of June.
June 15th.
We were busy. Yeah, they were here for a whole week.
One was in the hospital, and then another one was had I don't know how to say it.
And so that obviously
It's just-
impacts your schedule. What's your
Yes.
plan for completion?
For the interim audit, we will complete it within by the middle of August. That's my plan. We have completed substantially. It's just there are follow-up notes that we need our staff to clarify. And so at that point, we will have an exit meeting with management.
Will you report back to this committee, or will that be done just by Robert?
We don't usually report interim findings unless it is fraud related.
Right.
So far, we have not noted any fraud, but it is up to the committee or management. What we usually do is we have our findings and we share it with management, make sure we get all the facts correctly. But if there's something management choose to share, and that's okay. But our formal report is at the end of the year.
Yeah, and we could bring that to you because that's what it's called memorandum of internal control or interim audit questions that come up. And we'd be happy, we could bring that to you in our September meeting, which would probably be ample time if we have our exit interview in August. We can bring that back. Whatever findings that we have, we can just report back to the committee.
I think we have in the past.
Yeah, we have.
I know I've asked this question before, but my feeble mind doesn't remember it. I would have had to have asked the question, but why do we not get to the final audit until months after the close of the year? In the outside world, you gotta have all this stuff done 75 days after the close of the fiscal year, pretty much. At least that's the norm.
It is okay based on our pool of clients.
Yeah.
Where the town is in the middle of where our audit season is. So we start our audit season the last 2 weeks of August, and then we end it by Christmas. So where the town lands is kind of in the middle. The reason why the audit starts later is because there is the modified accrual period of 45 to 60 days. most of our clients like to wait until then to close their books. So we are already looking at the beginning of September. And I'm going to put you at the spot,
No.
Barbara. It's doable. We do have clients that goes, right after Labor Day, or in the case of East Bay month, they go in late August, or Mountain View also goes in late August. So it is doable. It takes a lot of coordination from not just
So
finance,
virtually
but
all the agencies have a June 30th
Right.
fiscal year end,
Mhm.
and some close in less than 3 months in the 75-day time frame, and some take 6 months,
Yes.
7 months, whatever it's going to be.
And also,
And there's no state.
No, because the town is responsible to send in the state controllers report, but currently, that is in October, the deadline, but currently there's no requirement to reconcile that to your audited financial statement.
Really?
So, yeah, so it's.
we do that. The state,
That's amazing.
exactly. The state says you have to turn in a state controller's
Not really.
report by October, and we do. We meet that deadline, just like every agency does meet that deadline, and it's basically an estimate because your audit isn't completed, so the state just wants something to show that you have something and you complete it. When our audit comes out, that's the final audited numbers that come out. And again, and Catherine's right, there's modified accrual basis. We'll still receive revenue from the county in all the way up to August for revenue for the 14-15 fiscal year. So the reason why a lot of agencies wait is because you want to capture that. And so it's 2 months after the fiscal year that you're still getting revenue from the county and from the state, and so by the end of August, beginning of September, you pretty much have everything you need for your audit. The second part too is when you have an auditor, sometimes you have to fit within the audit schedule. So I mean, we're not the only client, and we want to be as soon as we can when we line up. But I think by anytime between September and November is when most agencies finalize their audit, and we've been around that time. And by the time we finish, it's November, it's the holiday. We have everything done, so we come back in January and we present it to the committee
So
and to the council.
I should be happy that we're not as bad as CalPERS.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
In a lot of ways.
Just a quick one, how much do we pay you for the audit?
Actually don't remember. Do you have right
It's
now?
about, I think it's 49,000
That's including a simple audit and
Yeah.
state controller's report. So it's more than just this piece.
Right.
Can we actually put that out to bid before this fiscal year we just ended? So we interviewed
Right, we interviewed 3 clients.
three
Three
finalists.
Three
I
Three
should say.
auditor firms, right? And so they're just completing their first year of our new audit contract.
Okay. Great, thank you.
So, auditing the controls and making sure that the cash receipts are properly posted and posted to the proper fund and all of that is very important. So while you're doing that, clearly the horror story for any public agency has to do with fraud. And a few years ago, we had a problem with the mosquito abatement district, where there in fact was fraud that occurred. And not being on that, and not having been on the council when that occurred, I never really looked at what the details were of that fraud. But you want to just be sensitive to anything that can happen that appears to be unusual and could be, some kind of a signpost. And from what I reviewed from the council level, that level of sensitivity at the mosquito abatement district at the board level wasn't as strong as it should have been.
Okay.
And I've never had any indication that we weren't that strong, but clearly that we want to make sure that, you know, we're highly sensitive to any of those possibilities, however obscure they may be. So I just wonder if you want to comment on that.
Sure. We do have our, we do try to be very sensitive in, you know, all kinds of fraudulent situation. And we are not, we are hired by the council to come to provide opinion on the financial statement. So keep in mind that there may be fraud out there that we cannot detect. However, that's why we have the conversation with you now. We talk to staff. We did take your comments from last year into consideration and did perform some reviews in last year's audit and then also this year of a few areas that you had brought up. So we do look at that. We take our the good thing about being a local firm is we do our audit on site. So we don't want to piecemeal it. We want to be here and talk to the people and just kind of observe it. And that's what we do. We also take our knowledge from the other clients and then incorporate into this audit. If we ever suspect anything, we will definitely report. We're required to report to 2 levels up from where the fraud occurred. So it will definitely be the committee and also the council.
Yeah, I suspect that often how it happens is along the lines of what you said, is somebody's just trying to be efficient and they're, you know, like a super user, they're participating in something they aren't even necessarily aware that they're overstepping a control that they shouldn't be overstepping, and then something happens and there's an opportunity that occurs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, just one thing, so it becomes a slippery slope.
Yes.
So I mean, from our side at the council level, I try to look at this as much as I possibly can, because I look at many of the checks that get written. I mean, you're looking at a lot more of them than I am. But, you know, I mean, it's the horror story, right? It's the worst case scenario. And Atherton hasn't been entirely clean in the past. So it's something we want to keep this razor sharp.
That's what I raised it because I don't know if you noticed, Sacred Heart Schools had that issue. A woman from that place going to jail from embezzling just right up here at the school. And she and her assistant were doing exactly what I was focusing on, credit cards and other issues. But yeah, I mean, she stole $400,000 or $500,000.
It's the credit cards, yeah.
I'm sure that these ladies would find
Oh, yeah.
a missing
Credit cards, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Right.
when we do our audit planning and brainstorm, we
Yeah.
always
No, I'm
tell
not worried. I
staff.
was worried a
Yeah.
few years ago. I'm not sure.
That's an issue.
What else, Steve,
Okay.
do you have to?
Well, we took into your comments from last year. There were a few areas that you wanted us to look at. We looked at the credit card usage last year. This year we looked at there's a vendor that helped you rent out the park facilities, and you wanted to see the procedures and control of cash receipts. And we did see that although the event is booked by the vendor, the cash receipt goes into the city. So there is that segregation of duties. So we looked at that, and we also looked at the permit use. I don't know if you remember that residents have to have a permit to use the park if they're over 20 people.
You have to get a
Days
a
permit.
day use permit.
So we looked at that process to make sure that there is a good segregation of duty between issuance of that permit versus remittance of the money.
Do you look at transactions between Dana Catering and because the town is a third party to it, right? Dana Catering is the contracting party with the users.
But the payment comes to the
Yeah.
town and then we
I see.
pay them.
Yeah.
So that's the
Okay.
control.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
any other questions on the scope of the audit?
so.
So that being said, that as our standard routine question, we want to be aware if there's any fraud happen or anything. Are you aware of any fraud or any accusation of fraud, or are you
See, they're
any
gonna ask me
No.
susceptible areas of fraud that you are aware of?
No.
Not
Okay.
to
No.
my knowledge.
No.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you. And anything else that you would like us to know so that we can incorporate it into our next phase of the audit?
I guess, we've just, we've enlarged the city manager's budget, and not to pick on city manager because, we all love him and trust him implicitly, but we have, over the last couple of years, we've given him more,
This last year, we specifically increased the limits.
right, for city manager, and,
What's the limit for?
I think it's now 14. or is it
25, I think it was. I think it was
was.
15 and it went to 25.
Yeah, so, it did kind of grow quite a bit.
Where it doesn't, this is for where the city manager can make a decision, doesn't have to bring it to the council.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And
this is
expense of it.
purchasing policy.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
So, and he makes a report
Yeah.
of any
Of it.
purchases
Yeah.
And it's almost always zero.
recently.
Right, and I
On a
think,
weekly basis, but
yeah,
there, so I guess as long as we keep
Right.
tabs on that and make sure we know where that's, and how that is being spent, is it being spent, it's not on a credit card, it's
Right.
through a purchase requisition,
Right.
and it goes through the accounting and.
proper channels.
Proper channels?
Yeah, and I think that's, as they look through.
It has to be budgeted in the budget?
It has to be within the budget, and I think when we had increased it last year, and it was during the time when you were over here for the audit, it was just to increase the limits, and I think a lot of that was because when there was time for projects or certain things, we'd have to wait to come to council, and
Of course,
usually
there's always
things,
a reason.
right, and
That's
usually
right.
things it was just right below the threshold, and
That's
so that
exactly what
was
it was.
the reason for
Right.
increasing
That
it,
was,
right.
I mean, where this
And some of
happened
the
was with the
technology.
AV system
Right.
in
Yeah.
this room.
Right, right.
That it was right at the threshold,
Right.
you're exactly right, and
And
Mhm.
But still,
And-
again, I just don't want that to continue
Right.
to grow and be that kind of a slippery slope for
Right.
us as council to,
that's in our control.
Right.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
but-
So when you get
They'll
your,
say-
when you get your report of disbursements,
Uh-huh,
this is like another page to it, if he spent if he
Right.
authorized a disbursement that.
in his weekly city manager's
Mhm.
report, there's a section about, any city manager purchases,
Yeah,
right?
within his authority.
Within his,
Right.
under his authority.
Right. And they've looked at that when they've gone through the interim audit, and as when they come back to do the final audit, they would do some more testing as well. And they can verify based off, because they have a copy of our purchasing policy, and they could see if it fell within, did we do the different, if it was professional services, if it was goods and services, if it fell within the threshold.
I do want to point out that the town, however, yes, that's true, but the town do not want to rely on the auditor to be part of the monitoring.
Mhm.
So if I may make some suggestions, there are other things that you can do to monitor it. To have the person to self-report of the transactions, they may not be
Right.
the best way to monitor it.
Okay.
There are reports you can run in the financial system that if there is a concern, maybe between 15,000 to 25,000 of purchases made during the year, and you can look at those transactions. And what we have done special projects for other clients is sometimes the limit that needs a council approval is $50,000. Then there will be a lot of POs for $49,999. So there may be a range that you want to run just to see if there are POs to the same vendors for
I
the
see.
similar items,
Mhm.
so that you know that if people are trying to work around the system. So that's and it can be easily reviewed. It can be done maybe at the committee level or at the council level. then you're not relying on, us who only pull certain amounts of samples every year
Sure.
to detect it.
Okay.
We can't ask you, or you're saying it's not in the scope of the contract? Because in the commercial world, the auditor cannot be used to, advise you on your accounting. So is it that we can't, or that it's not in the scope of the contract?
No, we can do AUP project if you say, okay, I wanted to look at, amounts for, if there's a specific scope of the audit, I'm sorry, of the project you want us to look at, and we can say, let's say in this case is any disbursement with the amount 20,000 to 24,999, you want the auditors to run a report, pick all the transactions, look at all the backups. That's something that we can do, but no, we cannot, be part of management. We cannot, on an ongoing basis,
Do it.
monitor this for you. But a
The
cheaper way
finance
to
committee could request that.
exactly. A cheaper way to do it is that you can just
Do it ourselves.
exactly do it yourself,
Sure.
and having the knowledge that you are looking at it is already what we call a fraud deterrence.
Well, maybe one way we could do it is the committee could request Robert to do a report that's even broader than that. It could be anything between $12,500 and $25,000. We can get it, look at it. We can ask you in the next audit to confirm it. See if there's anything that's missed.
Okay.
That's both an easier thing for you and manages it internally.
It would be better if you have a way to monitor it.
And so what you're saying also, excuse me, Ken, you said to have, right now, George is like self-disclosing, right?
Mhm.
And so who else would then disclose? Maybe Robert would disclose on a,
I would ask to run a report directly from the system.
okay.
So that will be then you're taking out the part of the disclosure part. You just
This is what I was talking about before from an exception report, so you could set up something where there's so many instances of certain checks happening, this committee gets a report, or whoever else gets a report, it just happens automatically, and then it leads, and then I meant, is what should that report look like? That's part of the,
Okay.
where they, I think, can provide some guidance. You said not the format, but in terms of, is this the most relevant information we should be looking at? Then we don't need to be asking for a report all the time, or this and that. If you get the right exception reports in place, and your point's a good one about it being a deterrent, just that people know that it's showing up. And the other one is that it really should help capture stuff. If you get the right information over time, you may tweak what the report looks like. So.
and
Good
not,
idea.
Yeah. And it's currently, that form of report is currently created every month. When you see the claims report, you can see the total amount, right, by each individual. So we can, do some within that report.
You're
certain
talking about
amounts.
the warrants?
Right, the warrants are in there. We get
Y'all
that.
have seen every.
I don't think they get them.
Right.
We get
The
'em.
council gets the warrant,
Oh.
check warrants.
But it's in the agenda packet, and so everybody gets them.
True.
It's
but
in the agenda packet,
I've seen them in the council packet.
in the
Right.
council packet, yeah.
For the
But-
exception.
it's a burden to go
This
through all
committee-
at
That's
once.
Since
what I
I've
was going to
been
say, is to
involved.
the extent you have exception reports, not instead of, but what it really is doing is intended to help you cut through the noise and see what's most important, and then ask the questions about that.
How many checks would there be roughly, between 12,500 and 25,000?
Gosh,
On an annual basis?
No, on a monthly
monthly
basis.
basis,
5?
if that, 5,
I think it'd
if
be
that, yeah.
not a bad thing for this committee to look at those once a quarter.
Madam Vice Mayor,
Yeah.
I believe that for your concern though, it would be better to look at the POs, because the PO is what the purchasing policy dictates, right? For the 25,000 is in regards to PO, not for disbursement. Because once a PO is approved, the payment can be in different amounts, and you won't be able to capture that by just seeing the warrant register.
From my vantage point, the problem is,
We never see POs.
since I've been involved in this group,
Mm-hmm.
I've never followed an audit trail on a single transaction all the way through from one end to the other. So other than what I've heard from you people and from Robert, I can't say that I have a real understanding of the checks and balances. And that's probably not good for a committee that used to have audit in its name.
Right, so Robert, we never really get to look at POs. Those are never,
Well, no, because that's what the purchasing policy was created for, to establish that process. So, I mean, we can delve into how much detail you want to do. I mean, as far as
I know,
POs,
for example, you got $1,000 limit on a transaction on a credit card. I guarantee you that frequently, all the time, every day of the week, guys are in the public sector at least are running through an item on 2 credit card charges, because that's what he's got to do to get his job done.
Right.
Hopefully, it's a legitimate job for a legitimate purpose that does his entity some good, and he's not taking it home, to the wife and kids. But so you're right. How far should we go? But I think we should go farther than we have. Whether it's a subcommittee of the committee or what, I personally would like to have a better understanding of the process from way over here to way over here.
Right. And that was part of the process that we had a meeting. It was with you and Mr. Massey. We had last year around the fall. We discussed the process of how the AP process goes. From how it's approved, who signs the checks. It goes from the department level to the city manager. A requisition has
Right, but
to
at
be
the time
signed.
you were just trying to calm Jim down because he had a couple things that were upsetting.
Right, but that's the process.
And too, they did a good job.
And so, that's something we could bring back, and we could, have level of intention that the audit committee, finance committee wants to be involved. We could set up a desk, and you know what I mean. That's how far it could go.
I might suggest that you do what you did to calm me down, is exactly what you just described.
Right.
As part of one of our regular
We
meetings,
can do that.
describe the process
Of how it works.
all the way through, how it works.
Yeah.
Because
we explain the auditor is aware of our process,
right.
and if you want to
But some of the
be a
members of
part
our
of it,
committee may have not
Yeah.
been aware of the process.
Mhm.
And from their experience, they may have a different slant on it, or maybe a better way to do it, or whatever.
Okay.
So it's just an idea.
I made some notes. I'll try and revisit that. Anything else?
No, I think that's it for us. I have, does anyone want another of my business card? If you have anything that you would like to talk to us about?
I have
So I haven't.
Throw me one. I have Grace's, but I don't have
Okay.
yours. Thanks. Good talk.
I have it from last time, yeah.
Oops, sorry. If you have, please give me a call if you have any concerns.
You ladies don't
we're
have to sit.
really not supposed to do that.
To,
We go through, yeah.
okay.
That's
Yeah, because we have one voice, we shouldn't be independently communicating and, talking to our consultants.
I understand that, but for our
audit,
audit
For these
standards,
questions,
Oh, these?
These
yeah,
questions.
we have to
Okay.
have a
I
direct
think
communication
they would
with
want
you.
direct communication with those
Okay.
questions.
Oh, for those questions, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the next item on our agenda, finance meeting dates. Robert, it was nice of you to print a calendar, print individual monthly calendars for us.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'm gonna use them actually, but I don't know whether that was necessary, but,
Well, it was just kind
in
of
reality, we typically, at each meeting, decide whether the proposed date is gonna work
Right,
for a
right.
quorum
Mhm.
before we cast it in concrete, but does anybody have any objection to the schedule
Yeah.
Robert proposed?
I mean, it's like, just in general, it's the second Tuesday
Right.
of every month at 2
Every other
o'clock.
month, right.
Every other month, yeah. Second Tuesday, every other month at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, I may have a problem with the January date, but I can either look at these now or I can look at them later and report back.
Well,
And
again,
it's been, we usually
Or
sort
we-
of reset.
we can
it. This
change
is,
Right. We can set it
so
as
we need
now,
a starting point.
but exactly at a starting point, and then at each meeting, it was presented in the report is we can do a majority vote to set the next meeting date. This would be what we set up initially, but every meeting, like September 8th, what if we meet and we say, okay, our next meeting date's November 15th, and maybe there might be some conflicts there. So the board at that time could say, okay, let's vote to see if we can change the meeting date, and we'll vote, and
But-
majority, we
But
can
in
change
general,
it.
you really do wanna try to keep
Right.
it settled, because the public then gets it
Wants
in
to
their
know.
head, you know, that every other month, it's gonna be 2 o'clock,
Yeah.
So we're doing,
second Tuesday.
November 15th is a Sunday. I'm just looking at my phone.
I'm sorry, November 10th. Thank you for that.
November 10th.
November
There
10th,
may be
correction.
some other issues there too. I didn't go through them all, but
Oh. Well, I-
It's correct on the calendar, I just
It's
put the
on-
wrong number on the actual written, so November 10th,
I'm just looking at the calendars.
Yes. the calendars are correct. March 8th is correct, May 10th is correct, and then July 12th is correct. So the only correction would be from the November 15th to November 10th.
November, yeah, 10th.
All right. So, then you wanted to, touch on the budget that was adopted last month?
Yeah, so real quick then, just so we can move, before we move over from item number 6, so is it okay with setting this as a temporary calendar?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't
For
need
the
a
year?
motion.
Good for me.
We don't need a motion.
Yeah.
I'm gonna miss September and October.
You mean September, November?
So, wait.
September, November. October.
Sorry, September,
Well,
Yeah,
then just
September.
September.
oh, we're every other month, right?
Yeah.
September, no, I'll make November, I'll
Okay.
miss September.
Okay. So this will be tentative, and then every meeting, we'll set the agenda, I mean, the meeting for the next
Yeah.
date, and if there's ever a conflict between different committee members, we can do a majority vote to change.
But nobody has a conflict on September 8th.
Except for,
We can cast it.
yeah,
Okay.
the day after Labor Day, is that something?
Yeah, that's the day after Labor Day.
Yeah.
Should've gone there.
Is it really? Labor Day is
Labor Day's the 7th.
Is the 7th? It's late.
Well, then,
Yeah.
If
the
you want,
second
we can
Tuesday- yeah,
change that one.
because- Yeah.
We could change that to the 15th, and good point. I
I'd-
mean,
I'd
it
love
is
to
the,
change, I'll be here on the 15th if we could do that.
Yeah, Labor Day,
Change the
Okay.
15th.
Labor Day.
Let's do
I
that
didn't
then.
realize Labor Day was that late. That is a little problem.
yeah, right? Thanks for pointing that out, Mayor. So if everyone's okay, we can change this September 8th to September 15th.
15th, yeah.
That'll be our next meeting.
Because that one we can't monkey around with, the others we can.
Yeah, yeah, and then we'll go from there. So this will be a tentative schedule for the year, and then as we go through each, if we need to change, we'll just do a motion and get a majority vote at that time.
Okay, what did you want to, I mean, all this budget stuff is
yeah.
pretty much rehashed.
If anybody has
but
any questions, right?
I did notice that a couple numbers that were different from,
From when we last met?
yeah.
Yes.
And they're not, it's not a big deal, but the expenditures, went from 11,784,107 to 11,798,069, so 14 grand, which affects the numbers all the way down. Was that thing about joining some other organizations or something? Some dues or,
Where
I
are you
can't,
looking at here? The plans,
There was about $15,000 put into that.
that'd be about the right amount.
Discretionary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Remember that?
okay, well then,
Yeah, that was just the main.
that's probably what it was.
Yeah. But other than that, just, straightforward, I think we're continuing to be fiscally prudent with our finances. The council made some great strides as far as putting money towards the CIP, $614,000 for some CIP projects. And you can see, what they entail. A big portion of it, $225,000, is the beginning stages of the park master plan improvements that will start this fiscal year. The council did make staff made a recommendation, council did agree, we set aside $2.3 million from the unallocated reserve towards CIP, which within the next fiscal year, that hasn't been identified, but $2.3 million has been earmarked for the capital improvement program. And as we go through the budget process next year, we'll identify priority needs and projects for that money.
Can you actually go back one category there?
Yeah.
Where we're talking about the pension funding?
Yes.
That dollar amount that we're gonna be billed each year, which this fiscal year is $120 grand for miscellaneous and $337 grand for safety. How do they bill that? You don't get a single bill.
Right, and let me just mention that, we just got the bill today, they're made available, so, we're gonna have about $16,000 in savings, based off of this if we prepay it, so we have to the end of the month to pay it. We did budget these amounts, so we budgeted
So we can-
$458,000, and we're
So
gonna
there's a
pay it.
carrying cost or something that they, if we pay it monthly?
Yes, if we can pay it monthly, but I'm just, it's in the budget, we're just gonna pay it in a
And
lump
we have the
sum.
cash,
Yeah.
so it's gonna be a lump sum payment.
And it's 16,000 less, so it's a 458 minus the 16,000, so it's gonna be about 442,000 that we're gonna pay. So we have
And the
16,000.
16,000 is effectively a discount for an upfront payment?
Yeah. So I'm gonna take it. So we're gonna, and it's been budgeted, so we're gonna make the payment at the end of this month. And then we're good to go until next year. They come out with the actuarial in October. We'll get an understanding of what the next year's unfunded liability component will be, and we'll budget that again in the next fiscal year's budget.
Okay.
So.
All right, I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. And then other than that, I mean, we're with our projected ending unallocated balance is about $5 million. It is 5 million for this fiscal 15-16 fiscal year. We're gonna meet all our reserve requirements, and we'll continue to focus on community priority needs. And attached also is the CIP program budget.
What is the CIP?
It's our capital improvement program.
Oh, thank you.
So it's just, streets and roads, drainage, anything that the town dials in, and it's a 5-year program, and it changes every year
I
based
have a
off of.
quick question about
Mhm.
this. We had a couple of accidents, maybe you covered this in the previous meeting, we had a couple of accidents that were in the news about cars falling into the Marsh Road ditch. Do we litigate, or do we require the food truck
Right.
and their insurance to pay for these repairs, and has that impact this repair project? Because it seems like a lot of those repairs, because cars keep falling into the ditch.
Well, as far as repair, they're gonna repair the fence. We bill their insurance, will repair the fence. The drainage project, the drainage component, that's something that's a repair that regardless of these accidents that we need to just focus on and do. So as cars do fall into that, most of the repair will be, the actual fence and stuff, so.
So
This is just-
what's in the budget here is the major rebuilding
Right.
of
Of
the
the whole-
channel.
Right.
Whole channel.
Right,
Because it's
that's the,
caving in.
that's the,
Yeah,
that's the
the pictures are
repair.
bad.
Right.
And so the other, the fence repair and stuff
Is-
is not.
No, it's not part of
That's
this.
That's
Yeah.
not called a capital improvement.
Right.
That's like in the.
That's such an operation maintenance that we,
Operational costs, yeah,
that we have to do.
that then we, I guess, build them back. Have we gotten
The
any
food truck
insurance
was
reimbursement?
interesting.
I think right now we did bill them. We sent them a copy of our expense for that, so we should be receiving something
And so
soon.
in part of this capital improvement for the channel repair, the major repair, there will be a new fence, not the chain link, that will be
Okay.
installed. It'll be beautiful.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
I have one more question for maybe
Yes.
next week's meeting.
Okay.
During the last year of meetings, we talked about billing the government for when heads of state visit town of
Yes.
Atherton.
Mhm.
Does that also occur for presidential elections?
We've tried that. We've already done that as well.
So what we are doing in our special event permitting
Mhm.
process, which will be heard tomorrow evening
Mhm.
at council,
Second
a
reading.
second of it, that we are requiring any resident who is having a big special event, such as a fundraiser, and that will require extra police activity and help, they will pay for that.
Okay.
So we didn't have that policy in black and white before, and so we couldn't legitimately bill those residents back for the, $1,000 or whatever it was, or $5,000, $10,000.
Right.
Closer to 10.
We could bill them, they just didn't have to pay it.
Right.
Right,
Now
and
they're
we
gonna
did
pay a
bill them,
deposit.
yeah.
We
now-
did bill them.
Yeah, and they wouldn't pay it.
Yeah.
That's right.
But, yeah, so we've now created this mechanism, and it's gonna be a second reading tomorrow night, and then it'll be in,
Pass
the-
after.
In a month. Interesting.
Yeah.
Glad you brought that up.
Thank you for that.
So along those lines, which I think is relevant to the finance committee just to hear, I know it's probably out of order, is we had, in the course of the budget, we had planned to put in place a wireless communications lease arrangement so that if a wireless carrier sought to add a tower or improve a tower that exists in the Atherton right-of-way, not the tower on our private property over here, but within the right-of-way, that 6-foot stretch from the road, they would have to obtain a lease, and there would be a lease payment. And our assessment of what the revenue to the town would be was in excess of $500,000
Wow.
from that.
A
So
year.
a year. So it was not a small number. And subsequent to the council adopting that provision, the city attorney determined that we couldn't require a payment from those companies. They have to comply with various requirements that we have in terms of camouflage and height and other requirements that are standard and reasonable, but we couldn't enforce the payment.
Why
So
not if it's on
have to
Atherton
see.
city
It's-
property?
It's not city property, it's right of
Right of
way.
way.
So it's not exactly
It's
our
a real
property.
hair
If it,
splitter, isn't it?
if it is on our property, this is private, a right of way is the private property, it's owned by the private property owner, but the town has a right of way, so, I mean, the way I look at it, and I could be wrong, but the way I look at it is it's effectively like an easement,
Yeah,
which limits what the homeowner can do in that stretch. And the telecommunication companies have a right to do anything they want in that stretch, as long as it complies with reasonable standards.
yeah, I've got one, these are,
It's unfortunate, I think it's unfortunate.
yeah, it's just
We lost that.
$500,000 in flesh.
Yeah.
Too bad. I was excited for a second there.
So I have two quick questions on specific projects.
Yeah.
Where the hell is Bellbrook Way?
Oh, so I know that. So I was actually going to ask you a question. That's off of Walsh Road. I was just wondering, I was going to ask you a second question. I see new construction, and as a experience with this, I thought in my case, Public Works made me rectify a right of way to the way the drainage plan is supposed to go. So I was just hoping that this was a new construction, but it's not. Huh?
No. No.
This is
It's just to
off
repair.
of Walsh Road up a hill next to the reservoir,
Yeah.
next to Cal Water.
So it must be $170,000 must be.
It's a huge
It's a
river.
culvert,
It's a
right?
Yeah.
next to a huge creek.
It's part of our
No,
channel.
it's part of the
Oh, sorry,
It's
sorry.
part of our
Yeah, it's on the
channel. It's
channel.
part of
Very
the
up- very
Atherton
upper end.
channel.
Yeah.
This is a culvert
Yeah,
in the channel that needed repair.
Yeah.
yeah.
And now, my other question is on the other end of the channel. What's going on with the Marsh Road retaining wall?
It's falling down, and we've.
No, I know
No, no,
that.
no.
I drive past it all the time. I know
Oh.
it's falling down. But, we got $2 million we're carrying over. I mean, what's keeping us from starting the project?
Permits. Permits are a big deal.
And the engineering, I
Right.
mean, this was approved back in 2013.
Yeah, we thought it was gonna be in process now.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And we were informed that it's not going to start until next spring.
Yeah.
So it's a
Yeah.
permit thing, isn't?
Yeah,
Because I
because it's
thought
a
because we
waterway.
didn't cover it and all
Yeah,
this stuff,
we're gonna,
that
I think it's.
we didn't have to go through so much hassle.
Right. Well, because now we have to do the Army of Corps of Engineers has to be involved. Fish and Wildlife
Oh,
are
gosh.
involved. Different agencies that because it's considered a waterway, we have to
I
get
know, but
special permits.
We're not changing the
I know.
waterway.
Exactly. But they have to review.
We don't have
make
to
sure.
do an EIR.
Right.
Was,
That was good.
that was the benefit. It was
Yeah.
a 2-year period of additional delay to do an EIR, which we would have needed to do if we sought to cover it. And since we're not covering it now,
So now you think it's gonna start in the spring?
that's what we're told, yes. I think it will start in the spring. It's a totally irrelevant issue, but there's also a proposal, from Menlo Park to redo the Willow Road 101 exchange next spring.
It's a mess.
And if they do that
There's
and
gonna
we
be
do Marsh Road,
traffic.
it's gonna be a real mess, because
Wow.
for us to do Marsh Road is gonna shut down one lane
Well,
on Marsh Road.
they've gotta get the Tiger Tooth grant.
Adding to that,
Yeah, I don't think
And-
that's
and-
planned right now.
Well,
That
I
was,
know that Jackie Spear, they've written letters of support in order to get that.
yeah.
and
I don't
Rick,
think
adding
there's
to
funding.
that, Redwood City is about to get with the Woodside Road project
And
approved, so.
Perfect storm.
Yeah, right?
I've raised, yeah, I haven't
Motion
talked
to
Redwood
adjourn?
City about this. I haven't talked to Menlo Park.
All in favor?
Thank you.
We're adjourned.